indicators.
I hope that actually goes through, but yeah. Recording.
I'm sure you all are familiar with the strategic priorities for the Department of Education. Our work obviously intersects with all these areas. Today, with the indicators that we're going to be talking about, we're obviously going to be focused a little more on student readiness, getting students ready for life after high school. And a little context on what we mean by APR and what we're talking about today. Of course, this is all federally mandated under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. States are required to monitor implementation on 17 different indicators and monitor district implementation on 14 of those indicators. Today we're going to be talking about both compliance indicators, which are targets that are set by the federal government at either 0 or 100%, depending on the indicator. And we're going to be talking about some results indicators, which are indicators that have targets that are set by TDOE and approved by OSEP. These indicators are part of how we make LEA determinations, overall determinations, which I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. You basically earn points based on either meeting these indicator targets or by demonstrating year-to-year improvement. These points are weighted and used to make your overall LEA determination. As I said, today we're going to be talking about 4 of these indicators. These are all under the topic of post-secondary transition. So we're talking about indicator 1, which is graduation rate, indicator 2, which is dropout rate, indicator 13, which is secondary transition IEP goals, and indicator 14, which is post-school outcomes. For each of these, we'll talk about the definition, the data source, and how the indicator is actually calculated and how you can calculate it yourself and monitor your own progress throughout the year with the data that you have available. We'll pause after each of these indicators to see if you have any questions or comments. You can put those in the chat, or at that time you can unmute yourself and share your question or comment. Just keep in mind we are recording the webinar, so obviously you wouldn't want to include any identifiable or individual situations. That it would be better off communicated directly to myself or Zach Stone, who's in the chat. All right. So let's start with indicator 1, graduation rate. If you've been in your role for a while, you may be familiar with the fact that this indicator changed recently. It used to be pretty much the same as the cohort graduation rate that's used for accountability. That's no longer the case. That change was made by OSEP to change the data source and the way this indicator is calculated. So what we're talking about here is the percentage of students with disabilities who graduate with a regular high school diploma. And the source comes from the exit data that is entered into EdPlan Easy IEP. We will be pulling the final exit report on September 1st, and those are the numbers that will be used for calculating the statewide indicator as well as your individual LEA indicator results. And the way that is calculated is by using that exited student report, that final report, and looking at the numerator of the students with disabilities who age 14 to 21 who graduated with a regular high school diploma. And then we divide that by the students who graduated with regular high school diploma, received a special education diploma, reached maximum age, dropped out, or graduated with an alternate academic diploma. So in other words, we're excluding some of the other exit reasons such as students who moved known to be continuing, transferred, or deceased, which are also included in the report but not counted as part of the denominator. You can pull these reports at any time you want, and many of you are doing that right now as we speak, since we're coming up to the September 1st official pull date. So you're monitoring those reports, and this is the time to see if any corrections are needed in advance of September 1st to your exit data. And so if you have one of those reports handy and you want to reference it yourself as we go, you're welcome to do that, or go ahead and log into Easy IEP, and you can pull down one of these reports right now if you want. Follow along. This is if you are wanting to look at your exit data, your exit report for the 2021-22 school year, you would just enter the July 1st, 2021 as the begin date, June 30, 2022 is the end date, and the student active date of July 1st, 2021. You can pull down the PDF if you just want to calculate your percentage. I like to also look at the report with details, which is in Excel as opposed to a PDF. If you are savvy in Excel, and you can type the formulas in yourself there and calculate yourself. Otherwise, if you have the PDF, you can just grab a calculator and calculate it that way. So let's show an example here. This is just a hypothetical example with fake numbers here, but if you were pulling down, for example, the Excel report with details, you can look at individual students in the report, and you can also find the same tables that exist in the PDF version. I believe if you're looking at the PDF, you'd want to scroll down to page 7 and find the table for all disabilities. And you'd be looking at the column for total students age 14 to 21. You want to locate, in the case of indicator 1, you want to locate the number of students who graduated with a high school diploma, in this case 19 in our example here. And then you want to manually add up the other categories that are included in the denominator. So that's graduated with a high school diploma, received special education diploma, reached maximum age, dropped out, graduated with an alternate diploma. So in this case, we have 19 graduates out of 22 total students. So that would be a graduation rate of about 86%. And relative to the state targets that were approved by OSEP, that would be a pretty good graduation rate. The targets you see we've mapped out through the next 5 years. Last year, the target was 78.72%. This year, we're looking at a target for the state of 79.25%. Questions on indicator 1 before we move on to indicator 2? Okay. We'll have another time for questions at the end if you think of anything. And in the meantime, we'll just move on to indicator 2, which is dropout rate. Very similar context here. It's the same report that we're looking at. It's the exited student report that runs on September 1st is where we get our numbers for the year. Here we're looking at the percentage of students with disabilities who dropped out, ages 14 to 21. And same denominator here, we're just including those students who graduated with regular diploma, special ed diploma, reached maximum age, dropped out, or graduated with an alternate diploma. The difference here, the numerator, is the students who dropped out. And same process for running the report. You can just run it once and calculate both these indicators. Same thing. I like to use the Excel that has the students that you can look at individually in the report as well, along with the tables that you would need to calculate your indicator 2 percentage. So here you'd be identifying the row for students who dropped out. In this case, 0. In this hypothetical example, 0 students dropped out of 22 students. So that's an easy calculation. 0% dropout rate for indicator 2 in this example. And of course, we want graduation rate targets to increase. We want dropout rates targets to decrease over the next 5 years. So we have last year a target of 7.84%. This coming year, our target will be 7.45% for Tennessee, with a goal, 5-year goal of the target going down to 4.72%. Any questions on indicator 2? Okay, moving on to indicator 13, secondary transition with IEP goals. This is our compliance target. We'll talk about that later. Let's define it first. So here we're looking at the percentage of youth age 16 or above with IEPs in place that have appropriate and measurable post-secondary goals, which are annually updated and based on transition assessment and transition services. So in this case, the source that we're using is the IEP monitoring results report generated by the Division of Federal Programs and Oversight, and it's pulled on September 1st. So that is part of the regular IEP monitoring that is occurring in your district. And as part of that monitoring, they are looking at post-secondary transition goals for students age 16 or above, and they are making a determination on the appropriateness and measurableness of the goals, and they're giving that report to you and to us for the use of calculating indicator 13. So the calculation is pretty simple. We're looking at the number of students who were determined to have acceptable post-secondary goals out of the total number of students age 16 or older who were sampled as part of the IEP monitoring process done by the Division of Federal Programs and Oversight. So monitoring this within your own district, you can look at post-secondary transition goals for any student age 16 or older at any time by going through Easy IEP and looking at their transition services. If you need any more detailed advice on how to access those, you can reach out to us at any time and we can walk you through that. But you can monitor that for all your students who are age 16 or older by looking at each individual student's goals. The students that will actually be included in the calculation for indicator 13 are sampled through an algorithm used by the Division of Federal Programs and Oversight. So you don't know exactly who those students will be at any given moment, but those are the students that are sampled and used for the calculation of indicator 13. And as we said, indicator 13 is a compliance indicator. So out of the students who are the IEPs that are selected through the algorithm, we're looking for 100% of those to have post-secondary goals that are measurable. Questions on indicator 13? Okay, moving on to indicator 14, post-school outcomes. This is sort of a three-part indicator, so it's a little more complex to define, but here we're looking at the percentage of youth who are no longer in secondary school but had an IEP in place at the time they left high school. And we're looking at whether they were in one of these three categories: enrolled in higher education within 1 year of leaving high school, or enrolled in higher education or competitively employed within 1 year of leaving high school, or enrolled in higher education or post-secondary education training program, or competitively employed, or some other employment after leaving high school, within 1 year after leaving high school. And so this is the source of this data is a student survey that is administered by districts. And the calculation is pretty simple. Through the survey, students are categorized into one of many categories, including those that we just mentioned above. So we're looking at the students who fall into one of those relevant three categories that we just talked about out of the total number of survey respondents. And so if you are, this is done on a sampling plan that was also approved by OSEP, if you are a district with less than 50,000 total students, then you are on a 4-year cycle to participate in this indicator. So your students are being surveyed every 4 years if you're a district of 50,000 students or less. If you have more than 50,000 students, then your sampling plan is done at the school level. So certain schools are part of the sampling plan each year. But you, as an LEA, you're participating every year. And I won't read all this to you. There's more information about how the survey is used to categorize students based on their responses in the APR process guide that was just sent out or released recently. I believe it's Appendix D that has the survey as well as a breakdown of how the students are placed into each of these categories, but this is just a little more detailed explanation. You know, higher education, we're talking about a 2 or 4 year school. Competitive employment, for example, we're talking about have at least 90 days working 20 hours a week or more, and so forth. As I said, this is a 3-part indicator, so there are three different targets that we have. So, for example, 14A is the percentage of students who are in higher education within 1 year of leaving high school, and that target is going to be 26.93%. And then 14B includes those students from 14A, but it also includes students who are competitively employed. That target is going to be 63.69%. And then 14C, which includes A and B, and students who are in a post-secondary training program or some other employment of less than 20 hours a week or less than 90 days. That target is 75.31%. Any questions about indicator 14 or any questions we can answer today about any of these post-secondary indicators?
We will never see which college necessarily associated with the student unless districts purchase National Student Clearinghouse data, right?
Don't believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I do think that most districts, the survey is administered by ETSU, but most districts are actually are conducting it with the students themselves, and just running through the survey with the students. So it may be an opportunity to ask at that time, but it is not, that question is not part of the survey. It's simply whether or not they are enrolled in higher education. So we have a question in the chat. For districts with less than 50,000 students who only need to survey students every 4 years, how will their annual data for this be calculated?
So if you are, if this is not a year for your district to participate, then that that indicator is not part of your determination for that year. If they are, then that indicator is used as part of the overall determination. It's weighted accordingly. Does that answer the question? So in other words, if you did not participate that year, you would not have a indicator 14 score. Okay, if any other questions come to mind, please reach out to us. You can reach out to myself, Zach Stone, who's here today. I'm sure many of you know Sharon Ordway, who's the Easy IEP Help Desk Coordinator. With any specific questions you might have. We have a quick survey. If you are able to scan the QR code or type in the link there to complete the quick survey for us as part of giving us some feedback on today's presentation. We would love for you to do that before you head out, and hope you can join us for the next in our webinar series on the APR indicators.